November with the launch of new consoles and, of course, Cyberpunk 2077. And yes, that is finally confirmed, as we've learned that the game has officially, at long last, gone gold. No more delays, kids. It's finally happening. It's an exciting
12 seconds later.
What's up, everyone? Tony here, and today we're gonna talk about Cyberpunk 2077, a game I'm now convinced will never actually come out. But for whatever reason, they keep releasing these gameplay videos and featurettes, and they're even pretending it has a release date, December 10th. These guys are so funny. Well, hey, I have nothing better to do, so today let's break down Night City Wire Episode 5, supposedly the final Night City Wire episode, as we are now just days away from the launch of Cyberpunk 2077, theoretically. Let's not waste any more time and get right into it. Before we jump into Night City Wire Episode 5 proper, we should take a quick look at a couple of other videos CD Projekt Red put out over the last few weeks. The Night City Wire Special, which gives us a look at the game running on the Xbox One X and Xbox Series X, and this PlayStation gameplay video, which gives us our first taste of the game running on PS4 Pro and PS5. We are shown some areas in gameplay we've never seen before, and I could meticulously break that all down, but honestly, the far more interesting aspect of these videos is over on the technical side. We can now clearly see the difference between the PC version, the next-gen versions, and the enhanced last-gen versions. We get to see what exactly is being sacrificed as we head down the ladder here, or rather, not being sacrificed. It seems like the response to this footage has generally been positive. Many were pleasantly surprised that the game looks as good as it does. I think we've all been under the assumption that some crazy downgrade was coming when they showed off the console version, since everything shown of the game so far was clearly running on super powerful PCs with expensive settings like ray tracing turned all the way up. It was unrealistic to expect the console ports of the game to look that good, but yet here we are. I think this footage looks absolutely incredible and rivals the very best looking games of the PS4 and Xbox One generation. I mean, we know for sure that the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X versions do not have any kind of ray tracing enabled. And yet, now I don't have Digital Foundry eagle eyes that could identify which effects are being used when looking at any given frame of gameplay, but if you covered the label here of which console the footage was running on, I'd probably assume this was running on PC with ray tracing on. It looks that good. I'm honestly not super surprised that the game looks as good as it does on these last-gen machines. My mind immediately goes to Red Dead Redemption 2, a game that showed exactly what those machines were capable of. Obviously, with the help of some Rockstar wizardry, Red Dead Redemption 2, a giant open-world game that is simultaneously the best-looking game ever made, ran at a basically locked 4K 30 frames per second on Xbox One X. It wouldn't surprise me, given how much dev time and money has been poured into Cyberpunk 2077 over the last 8 years, that some of the very same type of magic is on display here. They are squeezing every last drop of juice they can out of those last-gen machines, and the results are pretty incredible. Now, obviously there's an elephant in the room here. Footage from the base PS4 and Xbox One versions of the game was nowhere to be found. Getting a game as demanding as Cyberpunk running on what is now horribly underpowered 7-year-old hardware, well, most believe it's the reason why the game was delayed another 21 days at the very last minute. It can't be easy, and while many are disappointed that these ancient things are holding back the next-gen and PC release of the game, the fact of the matter is that there are well over 100 million base PS4s and Xbox Ones out there. A gigantic chunk of this game's sales are going to come from base PS4 owners, maybe even the majority of the sales. It's an audience that can't be ignored. Now, does that mean the base Xbox One version of the game is going to need downgrades at the level of Witcher 3 on the Switch? 720p and an unstable 30 frames per second with a ton of effects turned down or off entirely? Honestly, I don't think so. It's obvious that the last gen version of the game was in an unshippable state back in November, and the leaks have proven this to be true. That said, all of that leaked footage is basically useless for anyone looking to pick up the game on last gen consoles. The upcoming Day Zero patch is what really matters here, and I believe CD Projekt Red will provide a solid, playable Cyberpunk experience, even on the base Xbox One and PS4, just like Rockstar did with Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, speaking of performance, we also got some updated system requirements for the PC version of Cyberpunk 2077 thanks to this blog post from Nvidia. This was like music to my ears after I complained about the last system requirements graphic, which was not actually all that informative. This one definitely gives us some more important details and fills in a lot of the blanks. But unfortunately, it's still a little misleading. Looking at the graphic here, I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing. The scalability of the PC version seems really good, and you can get a damn good experience at 1080p or 1440p with a fairly modest rig by 2020 standards. Now, since the plan here on the channel is to present the game with the best possible visual settings, I'm more interested in the higher end over here. I'm happy to say my current PC does exceed these RT Ultra recommended settings at basically every level. But as I alluded to earlier, there's a catch. First of all, these specs will get the game running with the stated settings at 30 frames per second. Now, I don't think that's necessarily a huge problem. As far as I know, all marketing materials for Cyberpunk have shown the game running at 30 FPS, and it looks great. I've obviously played thousands and thousands of hours of 30 FPS games and shooters over the years, and it's fine. Heck, I could jump into GoldenEye multiplayer right now. Look at those single-digit frame rates, baby. Only a scrub would complain about this being unplayable. That said, the fact that anyone lucky enough to get their hands on a 3000 series card will only be able to play the biggest game of the year at 30 frames per second at the highest settings, it's a bitter pill to swallow. And that's not even the worst part. All of these figures are taking into account Nvidia's DLSS technology. That means the game isn't even really running at these stated resolutions, but instead at a lower resolution and then enhanced with Nvidia's DLSS tech. Now, I know a lot of people swear by DLSS and believe it can work magic for games when it comes to resolution and frame rate. But everyone's eyes are different, and for me, I find the imperfections really noticeable. Playing Control at 4K with DLSS just looks fuzzy to me at times, and it can be pretty distracting. For a game as fast-paced as Cyberpunk, I definitely wouldn't want to have a bunch of artifacts or aliasing on my screen as I make my way through the streets of Night City. Now, every game is different. Maybe the implementation of DLSS will be really great for Cyberpunk, and I won't notice the imperfections as much. It's impossible to know for sure until I get my hands on the game and get to tinker with all of the settings. But getting games to run at 60 FPS with ray tracing enabled is no joke, even for my 3090. Watch Dogs Legion runs like absolute trash with ray tracing turned way up, though that may be more of an Ubisoft problem. There's also Fortnite, which I thought my 3090 would crush even with ray tracing on, given its fairly simplistic visuals. Instead, I cannot hold a solid 60 FPS even with DLSS performance mode turned on. Turning DLSS off at 4K? Suddenly, we're playing GoldenEye again. I had to settle for either 30 FPS or lowering the resolution all the way down to 720p to get it locked at 60 FPS. It's not an apples to apples comparison, but if a 3090 can't run Fortnite at 4K 60 with ray tracing on, it might be a while before any PC can run a fully maxed out Cyberpunk 2077 at 60 FPS or higher. But hey, maybe I'm wrong and the game is insanely optimized and it'll run great. Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. Okay then, with all that tech talk out of the way, let's get into that Night City Wire Episode 5. Night City Wire Episode 5 begins with this Johnny Silverhand trailer. It features a combination of new footage and stuff we've already seen, all told from the perspective of Johnny. Right off the top, we receive confirmation that we will be taking control of Johnny Silverhand at certain points in the game. Indeed, through memory sequences, it looks like we'll turn back the clock a couple of decades and play out some of the key moments of Johnny's life. We get a taste here in the trailer of a number of these Johnny Silverhand gameplay scenarios. We're also told explicitly what most of us already figured from watching the previous trailers. The super valuable chip that V and Jackie steal from Arasaka somehow contains the spirit of Johnny Silverhand. Before Dexter Shawn pulls the trigger in this scene, V inserts the chip into the USB Type-C HDMI DisplayPort in his neck. When he awakens, he sees Johnny Silverhand, the long-dead rock star and activist that ran wild on Night City once upon a time. Now, Johnny and V will team up to take down the Arasaka Corporation. I think at this point it's clear that that is the main story of the game, and all the stuff we've seen so far with Jackie and the life paths and the 48-minute gameplay demo was all just the game's prologue. Arasaka is our main villain, and both V and Johnny act as co-protagonists in the game. That makes total sense to me, and I'd expect nothing less as the role for a star as huge as Keanu Reeves. We see in a behind-the-scenes featurette just how much work Keanu had to do to bring Johnny to life. It's a fascinating little documentary, and I think it's safe to say that this is, bar none, the most involved an A-list star has been with the production of a video game, ever. Who even comes close? Like Ray Liotta as Tommy Vercetti? Maybe Norman Reedus for Death Stranding? It certainly wasn't this guy. Not only did Keanu do all of this motion capture work, but he had to record line after line of dialogue. He seemed endlessly fascinated by the tried and true CD Projekt Red style of storytelling. We know just how many different options and dialogue choices they pack their games with, and this insane amount of choice results in an insane amount of possibilities and an insane amount of lines of dialogue to record. The trailer ends with a shot of Adam Smasher looking scary as hell. It looks like in one of these flashback sequences, we'll fight him as Johnny, and I don't think it's gonna go too well for our rockstar friend here. Also, Johnny dropped a damn nuke on Night City back in his heyday, another sequence it looks like we'll actually be able to experience and play through in first person. Now he brings that bombastic personality and passion to V directly, seemingly chiming in on his every move. He looks over V's shoulder, guiding him like some kind of futuristic Navi from Ocarina of Time, except with luscious hair and beard. V seems to absolutely hate it though, and visits every Ripper dock he can to figure out just what the hell is happening to him. Honestly, I don't know what V's problem is. Who wouldn't want to talk to Keanu Reeves all day, every day? Also, he has a Porsche. Look how good this looks. What more do you want, V? What more do you want? After the Keanu focus, we then take a much closer look at the original score and radio stations featured in Cyberpunk 2077. As I've said in the past, music is so important to me in any video game, and for this game in particular, which looks to embody and bring to life an entire genre, it's especially important that they get this right in my mind. It needs to sound cyberpunk, the music being out of place in a world that is so clearly dripping with the perfect dystopian future atmosphere would be especially jarring. This feature gives us a behind-the-scenes look at the philosophy behind the game's sound. The goal, it seems, is to bring the cyberpunk genre out of the 80s and into the 90s. My god, they just sold me on this game with that line alone. That sounds incredible to me. I could definitely hear the 90s influence in some of the original music, and it sounds great. That pump panel mix of Confusion is one of the defining house tracks of the 90s, and we could hear it being sampled as a part of the game's music.
Gangs, corporate agents, politicians, and all manner of...
That is pure hype. There's no doubt that the grimy, acid house, industrial, and grunge rock music that defined the 90s will be right at home in the Cyberpunk universe. It just feels underground, and that's what I'm looking for here. CD Projekt Red has managed to bring in an amazing number of legit big artists to contribute to the game's soundtrack. I'm so hyped to listen to it all, and with over 7.5 hours of music in total, I could already tell that this is one of the precious few video game soundtracks I'll be listening to when not playing the game. Man, they are going all out with the music for this game, and I am so excited to play it on mute, because I'll be capturing footage, and if I use the audio, the robots will flag my video and I'll get a copyright strike. Yay. The corporate overlords win. The dystopian cyberpunk future is now. Dystopian cyberpunk future is now. But wait, they thought of that too. Cyberpunk 2077 will feature copyright protection YouTube mode, specifically for creators like me. I create. This is bar none the single most cyberpunk feature added to the game yet. Now I get to stick it to the megacorps, man. Forget Arasaka, Amazon is the real megacorp. Sadly, I think a mode like this is going to have to become standard in games going forward unless something is worked out with YouTube and Twitch. It would be real nice if they could stop being so lame about all this stuff. Next up, we get a quick look at Jolly, the lip sync tech of the future. Lip syncing is one of the tougher aspects to get right when it comes to realism in games, especially when the game is also receiving dubs in other languages. With games only getting bigger and depending more and more on voice acting and motion capture to bring their characters to life, I hope Jolly, or something just like it, becomes standard in all games going forward and helps speed up the development and localization process. I always thought the character faces in Cyberpunk looked really great, so it's cool to see how exactly they managed to achieve that effect. Plus, these guys are from Toronto, so you know they're good. We then get a quick overview of some of the digital in-game goods players could receive for the game if they own Witcher 3 or Gwent, or buy the game over GOG. Given the insane amount of cross-promotion Cyberpunk has been involved with, I could see them pushing this whole digital goodies gimmick quite a bit further. Will we see codes for downloadable goodies included with, say, a Cyberpunk Rockstar energy drink? Or the Johnny Silverhand Funko Pop? Or these socks? Come on, this is easy money here. Finally, Night City Wire Episode 5 ends off on a final 5-minute long gameplay trailer. It acts as the perfect cherry on top of this 8-year-long pre-launch hype cycle and basically sums up everything we need to know about the game. Its most important gameplay mechanics, and the story that has shaped and will shape this world. It's a fantastic trailer, and big surprise, the game looks absolutely incredible. We are also shown a lot of pretty cool stuff that I don't remember seeing in any other gameplay. We catch a glimpse of some swimming gameplay, which is nice to see confirmed, and obviously opens up a bunch of possibilities. We see a great looking mech that I have to imagine we'll be able to control in some form or fashion. Then, the narrator drops some bombs on us. No pun intended.
An economic crisis culminating in nuclear conflict has left America in pieces.
This nuclear conflict the narrator mentions is just a part of the decades worth of war being fought in the Cyberpunk universe. This lore is covered far more in depth in the World of Cyberpunk art book, and it is absolutely fascinating. I can only hope we'll see some of it realized in the game's engine, perhaps during those Johnny Silverhand flashback sequences. This stuff is way too good to be hidden away in a book that most people won't read.
With most of the continent degenerating into lawless war zones, people...
Most of the continent has degenerated into lawless war zones? You mean even Canada? Jolly old Canada? We would never. This truly is science fiction. Anyways, the trailer wraps up by showing us some of the less deathly serious elements of the game. Just look at these menus and all the different stuff we can get our hands on in this game. Clothes, roller coasters, upgrades, vehicles, Judy. How can you not be hyped at this point? December 10th, kids. Release is just days away for reals this time. And that's going to wrap it up for today. And indeed, the 8-year wait has finally come to an end.
CD Projekt Red. Cyberpunk 2077.
We will finally be able to play through Cyberpunk 2077 in mere days. The hype is basically off the charts for me at this point. This is easily the most hyped I've been for a game since Red Dead Redemption 2, and I don't think I'm going to be sleeping much this week. I plan to go absolutely nuts when it comes to video content and guides for Cyberpunk 2077, much like I did with Red Dead Redemption 2 all the way back in 2018. So if that sounds cool to you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel because I have a ton of ray traced goodness coming your way this week and in the weeks to follow. Before they delay the game by another month, an hour after this video goes live. Until next time, thanks so much for watching, everyone. Be careful to avoid spoilers and leaks, get hype, and take care.
You're breathtaking.